Welcome back, you guys. This is Mark with Ncengravers, and today we have a pretty interesting Glock 43X build. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the background of what's going on here. I want to explain what we're trying to do, and there's kind of two parts to this build. First part is we had a customer that we've done some work for in the past who reached out and said, "I want to come by. I've got another 43X I want to have done, but there's some specifics that I want to have done on this particular build, and I'm going to explain those when I see you." So this individual comes by, they bring their original gun that we worked on and said, "I'm really making a pair because I'm going to be proposing, and this is really going to be somewhat of a proposal / gift." That's all going to kind of get wrapped up into one thing. And this is a what I guess you call them a couple at this point, instead of a husband and wife. But right now, this couple is heavy into shooting, right? So it's kind of one of those deals where it really fits the role of what they like to do together, and I think it's super cool. Now, with that being said, I'm not sure 100% what kind of content I'm going to get from that. In other words, I don't know if some sort of proposal is going to take place and I'm going to get the footage and add it to the video, or if it's something's going to take place here. I'm not sure we'll pry that far into the lives of the individuals, but hopefully we will be able to show you guys a complete build in the end, and it kind of gives you an idea of where we're going. So that's kind of the sort of one side of this build. The other side of this build is we've got some stuff that you haven't seen before, and I want to take you guys through that, and no doubt you guys are going to be, well, you're going to be interested, and you're probably going to want to know how you can send yours in. So with that being said, let's kind of just jump into this. First of all, we've got a barrel here, we've got a slide, we've got an optic. Let's do these one at a time. So this is the Holosun EPS carry. This is going to take place on the rear of the slide. I want to discuss with you the three different setups that you could do, and then I'm going to tell you which one we're going to do. So the three different setups that you can do is you can take this guy and you can mount it basically right in front of your rear iron sight. That's kind of setup one, which is traditional. We would see that a lot. The secondary option would be to cut that optic to the rear of the gun, removing the rear iron sight. And that's mostly because this does have a built-in rear iron sight into it that would work with the front. So we do see that a lot as well. And then option number three would be that we cut the optic to the rear of the slide and we move the rear sight in front of the optic. So those are kind of your three options when you would go with an optic like this. You know, there's no wrong choice. It's kind of what fits your needs best, and that's kind of what you choose. This particular one, we are going to be cutting this to the rear of the slide, removing the rear iron sight, and we are not going to be adding the new iron sight to the front of the optic. So this is literally going to go away altogether. The iron sight that's built in with the optic is going to work with the front sight. And then, of course, in the future, you could always run a dovetail here, and you could add a rear sight back to the gun if you just kind of turned up and said, I don't like it. So that's kind of one of the setups that we're going to be doing here today. Is going to be doing the optic to the back of here. Let's talk about what else is going on with this slide. Now, I can say that there's a chance that some of this may be subject to change. Sometimes we do things and then we say, nah, I don't really like that, and we make some changes along the way. So I'm going to tell you where we are in the timeline now, and of course, it may change at the end. What we're going to be doing, what we're planning to be doing here is we're going to do a recessed area for some text. So basically what that means is on these guns, we've got front serrations, we've got rear serrations, we've got some text along the way. What I do not like to do is engrave through text. If you engrave anything through text, what ends up happening is, well, it just everything gets lower and the existing text still remains. So I don't recommend that. What we're going to do is we're going to cut a rectangular pocket over here. So we're going to come from this serration forward, probably about a quarter. We're going to come from this X back, probably about a quarter, and we're going to cut a rectangular area in here. And the reason for that is we're basically removing the USA and the 9x19. And then what we're going to do is we're going to end up using the laser to do an engraving, background texture, raised lettering. So what that means is we'll pick some letters that we want, and you guys, of course, will see that in the end. And that lettering will raise, and the background will be all textured, and the background will basically go down. So it'll appear as though those letters are raised on the slide when in all honesty, we're just removing the background, and we're not cutting the letters. We're cutting around them, if that sort of makes sense. And we'll show you guys that. Now, we got to be careful how we do that. And I say that because what happens is if we cut a rectangular pocket here, and it's a really big pocket, and then we find out we really don't want the lettering that big, then what we have is a lot of dead space around the letters. So we've got to make sure that we sort of run the text on this side over this real carefully. I call that ghost engraving, and what it is you're basically just roughing up the surface enough to see what it looks like, but you're not really adding anything to the metal or removing any of the metal. So you can kind of just it's almost like tracing something, but you haven't really done the real job yet. So I'll do a couple ghost passes on here and say I really like this size, and then I'll build my rectangle around that so it doesn't appear as though the letters on the side of the gun are a billboard or they're crammed inside of that box because the box isn't big enough. So you can kind of lose in either direction if you do it wrong. Let's talk about this barrel. What's going on with this barrel over here? So you know, I went back and forth with this customer, and like I said, we've done work for this individual in the past. We kind of got talking, and I'm going to be honest with you. As we get a little bit closer to Christmas, a lot of people don't process because they can't get here and can't get back in time for Christmas unless they're local. So sometimes right around this time frame, which is kind of like the Christmas New Year's area, we sort of take in some of this custom stuff because we can get in and we can get it back, and usually those are local people. So that's exactly what we've decided to do here. We have decided to take the barrel and we're going to laser port the barrel. Okay, so I know that is something that we typically don't offer as a service. We've done this before. I've done it on mine. I've done it on some other customers, and the idea is that, you know, it kind of just felt right. So at the time, I thought, let's do it. So what's going to happen here is we have to cut a window first. And so we'll cut a normal window up here, and then we'll do a chamfer on it, and that will, you know, support the area in the barrel that's ported. What we don't want to do is cut the window too big, and then we find out that the ports don't really align, or we cut the window too small, and the ports have to be really close together. We also need to make sure we don't cut the port too far to the front, because if we change the iron sights in the future, I don't want them hanging over the port, the slide port, or the barrel port. So we have to make sure that we do that kind of correctly. So we've got, that takes a little bit of planning there. And then, of course, on this one, what's going to happen is this barrel itself will end up being ported somewhere in that zone. So if you kind of look at these, and I'll do it this way, I guess that's the best way to do it. This barrel would lock up something like that. That's pretty close. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up cutting a window here to here, and then we're going to end up porting somewhere between here and here, right? Somewhere in that zone. That's the idea. And as the barrel, excuse me, as the bullet travels down the barrel, what that means is it will lose gas here, it'll lose gas here. There's a possibility we might do 3 ports, but it's probably going to be 2. But it'll lose gas in these ports, and then it will still stabilize before it has exited the barrel. Now, one of the things that's a little bit different from us than what you would maybe see from some of the other people out in the market porting, a lot of times on a barrel that's ported, what would happen is the bullet would travel this way, and then the porting would be straight down, right? So they would put this into a CNC machine, and they would cut their holes straight down in. And basically, as the bullet travels this way and passes the holes, the gas would rise straight up, right? So that's kind of the idea of traditional porting. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to be running this much more like the Glock 18C, which is a fully automatic pistol designed by Glock, and that's because the porting works better. So the idea here is that when the bullet goes down the barrel, instead of the porting going straight up, it's going to go like this. And the reason why is because as your gun usually, I guess if we could do it this way, as your gun comes back, in its cycles, your gun doesn't just go straight up, right? The slide doesn't just go straight up, it cocks, right? So, and I know it's going to be hard to see in the video, but once again, when you're shooting, the whole entire slide doesn't just come up, it actually slides back and up, right? Well, if you take a look at that angle, this would be the highest point over here, right? Not down over here. So we would match that port with the amount of angle that we get from the cycle, right? So as it comes to the rear and as it slides up like this, we're going to match that angle is what we're going to do. So it's a very successful style. Once again, this is something that I did not create. This is a design that came from the Glock 18C pistol probably decades ago at this point. And it seems to really allow the ported barrels to take very few ports, but to be very, very flat shooters. So in this case, that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for maximum gas release in the shortest area without compromising the barrel. Guys, let's jump into the work. Let's take a look and see exactly how it comes out in the end. right, guys, let's take a look and see exactly how this came out now that we have completed the cut work. Let's kind of go over that. I've got some notes here of things I want to discuss. I've got some comments on some things. I know there's going to be some questions involved. Feel free to leave those down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Let's just talk about it real quick. So this happens to be one of the three options of optic placement, and this was to remove the rear iron sight. Of course, this one has one built in that would work with the front. So we do see this as a somewhat popular choice between the three options. Number one, of course, being we're going to keep the rear sight, and then I would say this is probably number two, and then last but not least, they want to move that dovetail to the front. So once again, this is a great example of what that would look like if you wanted to delete the rear sight and use that in conjunction with the front sight. This is kind of that setup. Let's talk a little bit about the other work. So of course, we've done text removal, and then we went ahead and did raised text, textured background. You know, really just nice. I think it's in a good location where it's not going to see a lot of wear and tear, which maybe you would see in the front zone where the grips are. And I really like the way that the lettering pops kind of at the end. It's not over the top, but yet it is seen. You don't have to look for it. Also, we did a top window to match that ported barrel. Now, we're going to get into that here in a moment. I want to talk a little bit more about the coating. I don't believe we discussed the coating at the beginning of the video. This is what we would call our battle worn coating. So we do offer two different versions. We offer battle worn, and then we offer an NCE worn. And roughly the difference between them is battle worn means that the two coatings themselves are sanded and then they're cleared. So in this case, it is rose, then black, then sanded, then we end up doing a clear over it. And in the other case, it would be the whole part would be coated in one color. Maybe an example that would be rose. And then we would add black to that to highlight a lot of those lower areas like serrations, text, things like that. Any windows or pockets that have been created. So that's kind of the difference between the two of those styles. Once again, both of those are offered. They cost the same, so you're not really saving money in one direction or the other. It really just comes down to if you're after somewhat of that matte look. It does have a clear in case when we sand it we ever hit down to the raw metal, so you don't have to worry about any sort of rust. And in the other case, when we do the NCE worn, we don't actually do the sanding at all. It's more of a traditional wear that we would see on the market today, and we don't clear. Because we're not really worried about the two layers peeling from each other or rust being an issue. So, guys, that's kind of it. This is rose black, and then of course it's been cleared. Let's talk about the barrel. I've got a little bit of content there. Then I want to talk to you a little bit more about some of the upcoming stuff that we've got going on here. Of course, if you guys like the content, I would encourage you to subscribe, like, share, let people know about it. We are still building a lot of new stuff. It does seem as though a lot of that new stuff pops up over onto our Instagram and Facebook first. And that's where a lot of you had probably didn't see this project, but you did see the barrel porting, and you're like, what's going on here? And we've just been hammered with what's offered, when's it offered, what can I expect, what's the cost, turnaround time. I mean, it's kind of gotten out of control already, and we sort of haven't even started doing it. With that being said, we are going to have a dedicated video on barrel porting that explains it better. Let's talk a little bit about this barrel porting, though, and kind of where we ended up with this design. So, first of all, I want to talk to you guys just about the barrel, and I want to talk to you about another factory barrel, and then I've got something else I want to kind of run through before I put it back together. So the one in my right hand is the factory barrel, and then, of course, the one in the left hand is also a factory barrel that we ported, but it has a new coating. So you guys can see the difference. This is a factory coating. This would be our black coating. No doubt, do not make a mistake of it. This is a more durable coating. The factory coating is more durable, okay? So I'm not trying to make that comparison or tell you that one thing is something or mislead you. This, I believe, is one of the most durable coatings. Of course, this is going to be a wide range depending on what barrel you send in, whether it's a CZ, an FN, a Taurus, whatever you got, a Glock, a SIG, right? It's going to range on that coating because they all don't use an NDLC. Some use a black nitride, some use a nitron, some are stainless. So, I mean, there's a wide range there. But in this particular case, if you want to look at the color and tone comparison, factory barrels in both hands, factory coating, our coating. It's a little bit darker. I think that it matches the frame and the slide a little bit more in the event that you were just going with something porting. Once again, more durable, less durable. We haven't fully discussed it because we will have that conversation in the video. But we, in the end, we would recommend that you do a barrel coating on any barrel that's been ported because it really needs to be cleaned up, those ports, and then, so there might be a little bit of sacrifice there between losing a factory coating, or maybe you wanna provide a different barrel or something along those lines. We'll get into that in our other video. So triple port on the top. That's what we ended up going with instead of a dual. We thought that we wanted to get the most out of our porting with the least amount of over gassing. So we see that a lot in the market where they've got like these big double line ports or a big window sort of on the top, or even on a C model Glock. There's a cut here and there's a cut here, kind of like I guess you'd call it like a maybe like a grain of rice type of porting. And the idea is that in some cases they can be over gassed, right? Like there's a ton of gas coming out the top. It's maybe not quite as effective. We did talk about that a little bit at the beginning of the video. I want to go into that a little bit more. Before we get into this any further, I want to show you guys another barrel. We had a customer that reached out to us about a week ago, and they ended up buying one of our guns used through a shop. So of course we did the work for, you know, a prior customer. They somewhere along the way traded it in, and then we had a new customer purchase it. This all happened in North Carolina, and then they found us. You know, hey, who did the work and where did it come from? And the idea was that they wanted to get it recoated. It was kind of rough, and they went through another vendor to get it recoated and weren't really satisfied. So they wanted to come back to us and ask our opinion. And this is that barrel. So this happens to be a barrel from a Taurus. I believe it's a G2 Millennium PT111 G2C, one of those guns. And the idea is that this is from 21. So same coating, and this was from 21. Now what I can't tell you is how many times has it been shot, how many times has it been racked, you know, what's the, has there been a lubrication used on it, has there not? I don't have the answers to those questions because I don't own the product. However, I can tell you it's held up fairly well, you know, for being at least a year and a half, coming up on 2 years. I believe the customer said that we had done it early, possibly early 21. So, you know, we are, once again, it's impossible to tell usage, but once again, we are coming up on the 2-year time frame on the coating on this barrel. And obviously it's got some sort of usage. If you know anything about Taurus barrels, they come in stainless when they ship them. So that should tell you that these barrels wear extremely fast, and even Taurus doesn't want to put a coating on it because then they would be, you know, sort of maybe caught on the hook for recoating. So these barrels wear about as fast as a 1911 barrel. So go look at a G2C, a G3, any of those barrels that have a stainless barrel in them. Go to a gun show or a gun shop or grab your buddies, pull the barrel out, look at it, and you're going to be like, man, this guy's abused. Yeah, so this is probably a pretty good indication of how good that coating is. I don't think it's perfect. I certainly don't think it's this coating. But at the end of the day, I think it might fit your needs of what you're after. Let's put this in. I've got some more things I want to talk about. So this is kind of the setup here. Of course, we've got pictures. We will show you guys that. Triple porting right down the center. It goes from smaller to larger. And let's go ahead and put a spring in here. And then, of course, I'm working behind the camera, so we're going to do my best here. Guys, a couple of things I want to talk about barrel porting, because I know that's kind of a big feature of this video, and that is it's going to range, okay? So when we first start offering this, which is going to be very early in the turn of the year, which when this videos come out, we're in the turn of the year. And really, there's a lot of different makes and models out there, whether you got a CZ or you've got a, you know, a SIG or a Taurus or a Canic. We probably will start very slow, and we're talking like 43X, 1917s, and then we'll probably do like 1 TP9 and, you know, kind of there, you know, so on and so forth.
Then I'll go, and the rest of you, and so on.
What we're not going to do is take in tons and tons of different stuff and try to work through all that at one time. What we're going to do is pick the big ones and then go from there. So I think that that's the best way to do it. Also, something to take into consideration, as we had stated kind of earlier, is that the porting could be subject to change. So on some guns that are larger, you may see 4, you may see 3. I know we've had a lot of requests already for the Rivals, the Canic Rival. There's 2 or 3 people that have already wanted to send them in. Keep in mind, those slides are pretty aggressive from the factory. Cobra nose, top window, side window. So we're probably going to be doing 3 instead of 4. So a lot of this is going to be subject to what are we working with and how is it designed from the manufacturer and how would it work best. So, and we're going to kind of go into that a little bit more into detail whenever we do our porting video, which should come out here pretty soon. We've got some pretty interesting slides here that we've already ported. So we're going to be able to talk about those a little bit, and really interesting. So that's kind of something you're going to have to, if you have a question, feel free to email us, but it is something that you're probably going to have to kind of just hold off and wait until you find that it pops up and is offered for what you have. Let's talk about the rest of this. So frame slide. So one of the things I want to make a correction on, I kind of want to just maybe, not even really a correction, I kind of just want to talk about it in a little bit different tone or explain it maybe a little bit better. And that is the recoil and how this porting works. I know at the beginning of the video we talked about slides don't really come to the rear, they really climb. And technically, yes they do and no they don't. You know, I wanted to make a correction on there. I know there's a lot of YouTube correction perfectionist people that want to kind of step on people that maybe say something incorrect. Yes, when you do put this to the rear, and I'll slip a mag in here for those of you, this ends up being straight back. So technically the slide does stay on the frame and it does go straight back, but take a notice of the barrel. All the barrels do this climb, right? That's not straight. And if you think it is straight, get your eyes checked. So with that being said, we are creating ports to mitigate this, because no matter how this works, straight or not, you're feeling this because the gun is designed for this to pop up. And of course, in the end, and I'll do it this way, that means instead of cycling this way, we're technically feeling it more like this because our hand is down here. So the absolute worst point of the pressure is way up here, and we get it all the way down here where we're holding, right? So the idea is that we're holding it in the least gripped section to hopefully try to compensate for the actual action of what's going on here. And that means this is climbing and this is diving. So with that being said, yes, the slides do go straight back. I know there'll be that one guy who's like, dude, you're crazy. We already know I'm crazy. It's not a big deal. But with that being said, we are trying to create a port that is forward design, as we had talked about, goes this way. And that is minimizing this climb. So we're still seeing the climb. You know, that's not going to stop because the weapon's designed that way. But the idea is that we're choosing that up here in this zone instead of straight up, right? Because it's definitely not straight up. Also, one of the things I want to talk about with you guys a little bit here is over the length of the barrel. So that's another thing, is that we're creating ports that are not in one zone, but they're created over the length of the piece, right? So the idea is that we're limiting pressure from not only here, but all the way over here, right? And in some guns, there's a port over here, and there's a port over here, but really that's only one key part of the barrel, right? So they're not managing any of the recoiled section over in here. They're only doing it up in that front zone, or maybe at the end of the gun, right? So in this case, we're actually limiting it across the piece and not just at the end of the piece. We also go from smaller to larger, right? So more pressure, less pressure, more gas is going to be coming out of here. So that's kind of the way that works, guys. Hopefully you've been encouraged on something here, whether it's to watch some other videos we've put out. Maybe it's to search our Google reviews out because you want to see, you know, what everybody else has an opinion of. Maybe it's you want to just kind of, you know, sift through this and figure out what you want to do on your weapon in the future. So these are all key aspects of what we do as a business. We are a 5.0 on Google. There's a reason, right? We try to make it make sense when we're doing the work. We try to do the best work that's possible. We try to understand where the customer's coming from. What are we targeting? What are we trying to do, right? And those are all things that we take into consideration before we process the work, and that is how we get the perfect turnout in the end, and that's how we keep the customers coming back. There are a lot of first-time buyers, right? I want to get an optic cut on my gun. I really don't have anything else that I want to have done. And guys, you know, for you guys to leave a review, even those of you that have had stuff done, you know, years ago, it helps other people see who they should be sending their stuff to. This is a crazy economy the way it is now. Everybody is somewhat struggling. Prices have gotten out of control. They're just like super crazy. They don't even make any sense. With that being said, if you did not know, we had a price change with our optic cut service. I know everything's getting more expensive, but we're not. We're actually going the other direction. Our optic cuts used to be, excuse me, sorry, but guys, if you didn't know, when I film my videos, I go all the way through. I don't do any split scenes. So what we used to be was $100 for an optic cut, which we still are. That hasn't changed, right? But if you do black, just solid black for a coating, we don't charge you. We don't do just coating of the pocket. We do the whole entire slide. So we've got nicks, scratches, this or that or whatever. It's all going to get sandblasted down and recoated, right? If you're doing a different color that's not black, it's a $25 charge. So if anything, we used to be $150 for an optic cut, and now we're $100 if you go to black, right? If you go with a different color, it's $125. It's just getting ridiculous. And really the idea here is it's not getting ridiculous in a sense of the way things are working. It's just the way I see it is it's kind of sort of, I want you guys to understand where you should be sending your stuff. I want you to feel confident in in sending your stuff in, and on the same hand, I want to make it make sense for you guys financially, right? This is just a busted economy. Now, if you do get other services, there really isn't a discount on that coating because we do have additional work that needs to be cut and cleaned and things like that. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for an optic cut, I have absolutely no idea why you would shop any further. We're a 2 to 3 business day turnaround time. The black on the entire slide doesn't cost you anything, and we'll mount your iron sights in your optic if you provide them. We'll make recommendations on iron sights or optic if you're unsure. Like, I don't know how it gets any better than that. Guys, feel free to leave a comment. We are going to have some other dedicated videos coming out because we've got some dealer accounts that we've had a lot of you guys ask for over the last couple of years. That's not going to apply just to dealers. It's also going to allow the individuals to jump in on that too to get cost savings without having an FFL or without being a dealer. So there's more to that. We are going to have somewhat of a dedicated optic cut video explaining that pricing, explaining why it is, what it is, how it works, what our turnaround times are. That's subject to change. And what I mean by that is the cost isn't going to change, but if we get more busy, the turnaround time will change. So we would encourage you to get it in and get it over with before mid-year gets here and the world comes to an end and we're, 5 days out instead of, 3. So if the extra 2 days mean something to you, then you should get it in now. Highly recommend that you follow our channel. We've got a lot of stuff coming up this year, and let's see what happens. Let's look forward to it, and we'll go through this together, and we'll talk about these projects together. Thanks.